Okay, so you sent over this really fascinating article. It looks at Gabriel Garcia Marquez's love in the time of cholera and came as the plague, but specifically through this lens of pandemic resilience.
That's right.
And it just struck me how relevant it all still feels, especially after everything with COVID-19 recently.
Absolutely. It resonates, doesn't it?
Yeah, but the article's a great reminder that this isn't new territory for humanity, is it? I mean, you think back to the Justinian plague, the Black Death, even later bubonic plague outbreaks.
Exactly. Centuries of this stuff. These huge, widespread diseases.
And understanding how societies responded way back then.
Yeah.
It feels pretty important now, I think.
It really does. And what this article gets into, which I think is key, is it moves beyond just the purely medical side.
Right.
It explores the huge impact these pandemics have on society, on people, and crucially, our ability to bounce back, our resilience.
Which can be hard to see sometimes when you're in the middle of it, or even looking back, all the information, the news.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming.
Totally overwhelming. So the idea with this deep dive is to maybe cut through some of that noise. We can focus on what insights we can get from these really powerful books. And the article sets up the terms nicely. Pandemic, from the Greek pan, and demos, meaning all people, basically. A widespread disease.
Affecting everyone.
Yeah. And resilience, just that ability to recover, to spring back from really difficult, really adverse situations.
Makes sense. And it was kind of eye-opening to see the article place these books within a whole category, pandemic literature. It's not just these two.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole genre, really. The article mentions others you might know, like Boccaccio's Decameron.
Right, from the Black Death era.
Exactly. And more recently, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, or The Great Influenza by John Barry. Even Mary Shelley's Last Man.
Last Man. Didn't know that one.
Yeah, and Thomas Mullen's Last Town on Earth. It just shows writers have been grappling with this stuff for ages, political impacts, social changes, how people behave, relationships under pressure. It's all there.
So it gives us this really rich context for looking at Marquez and Camus.
Definitely. Each story captures something unique, but maybe let's start with Marquez, Love in the Time of Cholera.
Okay. Marquez, Nobel Prize winner, Colombian author. Famous for that magical realism, right? That mix of like the everyday and the totally fantastic.
Disaster of it. Think 100 years of
Solitude, Chronicles of a Death Foretold. Incredible stuff. So Love in the Time of Cholera came out in Spanish in 85, English in 88.
That's right. And it's set in northern Colombia, late 19th, early 20th century. So roughly 1875 to 1924.
And the backdrop is constant cholera outbreaks plus civil war. Just relentless crisis, really.
It really is. And one of the first fascinating points the article brings up is how Marquez plays with this idea of love itself being like a disease.
Like a plague.
Yeah, almost literally. Like love sickness isn't just a metaphor. It's this intense, emotional, mental state that feels as consuming, as physically real as cholera. What do you make of that?
It's a powerful comparison, isn't it? Because Florentino Ariza's love for Fermina Daza, it is all-consuming. It dictates his whole life.
Absolutely. But while that metaphorical lovesickness drives the plot...
The actual literal cholera is always there, too, shaping things.
Exactly. It's the background radiation of their lives. The article really stresses how the pandemic impacts everything. But then it also highlights the resilience.
Florentino's big declaration at the end, right? Forever.
Mm-hmm. That moment. It's presented as this huge symbol of resilience, not just for his love surviving, 50-plus years?
51 years, 9 months, and 4 days, I think he counts it.
Right. Incredible. But resilience also against the backdrop of the disease itself.
That kind of relentless devotion, it's almost a survival mechanism in itself, isn't it? Clinging to that one thing through decades of turmoil.
It is. And the article points out how his love actually fuels his ambition, too.
Yeah.
He works his way up in society wanting to be worthy of Fermina.
So even in that crisis environment, personal goals, that connection, it drives him.
It drives him forward. It's a fascinating look at motivation during long-term adversity.
And Marquez uses these symbols, too, like the parrot at the start. The article mentions it symbolizes temptation, danger.
Even death. Yeah, these little touches add so much depth.
Okay, so the ending. Florentino and Fermina, they finally get together when they're old.
Mm-hmm. Very old.
But there's another cholera outbreak happening.
Yeah.
Their riverboat is flying the yellow cholera flag. Nobody will let them dock because of quarantine.
Right, they're trapped, essentially, isolated by the disease again.
And what do they decide?
To just keep sailing up and down the river. Forever, as Florentino says.
It's such a defiant act, isn't it? In the face of this constant threat. That feels like a really unique kind of resilience, a stubbornness almost.
A refusal to let the disease have the last word on their love or their lives. It's quite something.
Okay, definitely something to think about there. Let's shift gears to Camus, the plague.
Right. Albert Camus. Very different writer, different feel altogether.
French writer, published in 1947, English a year later. And the setting is Oran, a city in Algeria, during a bubonic plague outbreak.
Set in the 1940s, so just after World War II. And yeah, the article mentions that common reading of it, the plague, as an allegory for the Nazi occupation of France.
Which adds another layer.
Yeah.
But comparing him to Marquez, what's the big difference in approach that strikes you?
Well, Camus really leans into that feeling of helplessness, humans facing this huge, indifferent, uncontrollable force.
The absurdity of it all.
Exactly. He's known for his absurdist viewpoint, and you feel it strongly here. The article points this out. It's about the human predicament when faced with something that just doesn't care.
And the way it starts is chillingly mundane, as the article reminds us. Finding dead rats.
Just a few at first, then more and more.
That slow creep of disaster, the initial disbelief, the authorities trying to downplay it, then the slow dawning horror as the plague takes hold.
That denial phase is so recognizable, isn't it? You see it in how societies react to crises even now, people struggling to accept the scale of it.
Until they can't deny it anymore, and then the quarantine hits.
And everything changes. The article talks about how society fractures restricted contact, fear, suspicion, this intense focus on just your immediate circle.
Avoiding the sick, the tension between, personal freedom and keeping everyone safe.
Yeah, that classic public health dilemma. Camus explores that social breakdown really powerfully.
But amidst that breakdown, you get these incredible characters. Dr. Bernard Rieu is central, right?
Absolutely. The article highlights him as this figure of selfless dedication. He just does his job, treats the sick, holds on to his ethics.
Incredible resilience, especially since he's separated from his own sick wife, who's away at a sanatorium. He carries this personal burden quietly.
He really does. His resilience is rooted in that sense of duty, of responsibility to the community. It's less romantic than Florentino's, maybe, but just as powerful.
Then there's Taru. He's the one who organizes the volunteer sanitation squads.
Yeah, Taru believes the plague is everybody's responsibility. He actively fights it, mobilizes others. But,
It gets him in the end, doesn't it?
tragically, yes, one of the last victims. It's heartbreaking, but it underscores the plague's indifference.
And Rambert, the journalist, he starts out just wanting to escape Oran.
Desperate to get back to his lover in Paris. But the article notes how seeing Rieu's quiet dedication changes him.
He decides to stay and help. That shift from self-interest to collective action.
It's a key moment. And don't forget Joseph Grand, the quiet clerk.
Oh, right, the guy struggling to write his perfect sentence.
That's him. But he also shows this quiet courage, working as the general secretary for the volunteers. Unassuming, but essential.
So eventually the plague does recede, the town gates reopen.
Yeah, there's relief, celebration. But Rieu, who we learn late in the book, is actually the narrator.
Oh, right. That reveal is interesting. Gives it objectivity.
It does. And his final thoughts, as the article points out, are quite sober. He concludes that while you can't conquer death itself, you can fight disease. You have to remain vigilant.
So he becomes this symbol of resistance, solidarity, that kind of pragmatic resilience. Keep fighting, basically.
Exactly. And the article also touches on the broader interpretation. The plague isn't just disease. It can stand for evil, or just the general hardship of being human, the stuff we all have to confront.
So, bringing it all together,
Yeah.
comparing these two huge novels, the article makes the case that both, in their own ways, show pandemics hitting hard.
Yeah.
Suffering is real. It's devastating.
No question. They don't shy away from that at all.
But crucially, they also both seem to find this remarkable human capacity to endure, to recover emotionally, to show resilience, even when things are incredibly stressful.
That's the core theme, right? Resilience in the face of overwhelming disease. It just manifests differently.
Yeah, in Marquez, maybe it's more about that enduring power of love, of personal connection spanning decades despite everything.
That almost romantic, defiant resilience, whereas in Camus, it feels more like a stoic, community-focused resilience. Doing the right thing, working together against the absurd.
Ethical action is resilience.
Precisely. So, thinking about you, the listener, maybe digging into these stories isn't just, literary analysis.
No, the article suggests it could offer a kind of understanding, maybe even comfort.
Perhaps. Seeing how people in these fictional accounts cope, find strength, maybe it provides some perspective on our own capacity to get through large-scale crises. It certainly felt relevant reading it again recently.
Yeah, definitely resonates. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway seems pretty clear. Pandemics bring fear, massive disruption, real challenges.
We absolutely do.
But history and stories like these, they show this powerful human ability to be resilient. Whether it's through love or community or just sheer stubbornness, human connections seem key.
The strength we find in each other and within ourselves. So that leads us to a final thought, maybe something for you to mull over. Reflecting on these books and maybe your own experiences too. What parts of human nature, what qualities do you think are the most important for getting through these kinds of widespread crises? And maybe more importantly, how can we actually nurture those qualities in ourselves and, in our communities going forward?
That's a great question to end on. Definitely food for thought.